Having a bucket list sounds like a perfectly sensible thing to do. Since Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman starred in the film The Bucket List and did things like skydive, visit the Taj Mahal and ride motorbikes onto the Great Wall of China, I think we've got a romantic ideal with bucket lists. You see, bucket lists do feel, and rightly so to a certain extent, aspirational and growth focused. Now we've got a bit more time on our hands in this chapter of our lives. Should they be of sunsets, safaris, and finally learning Spanish after promising ourselves all those years? But here's the thing. Bucket lists have a potential downside. The dangerous assumption with having a bucket list is we start to believe that once we've got all these things ticked off, we're going to be happy. However, all the evidence points to the fact that this is simply not true. So in this video, I want to talk about bucket lists, where they might be useful, but why in addition to this, having a reverse bucket list or even an anti-bucket list might be just as valuable. Welcome to What Happens Next. So in principle, I haven't got anything against the bucket list. Personally, I think that having goals means that we take positive action towards things we want to do in our own lives. However, I do think that creating a bucket list gives us a bit of a challenge because we start to believe that happiness is on the other side of that bucket list. Once we've ticked off all the things on that bucket list, we'll reach this point where we're happy. I believe that there's a more nuanced approach, and there's a great American author, academic and writer who's got real insight about this. Dr. Arthur Brooks is a professor at Harvard Business School who runs their Leadership and Happiness Laboratory and teaches people how to live lives with increased levels of well-being. Brooks, in an article that I'm going to put a link to in the comments, talks about the challenges with the bucket list and how the Rolling Stones might have been right all those years ago. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. One of the ways we might get what we need is to build our own reverse bucket list. You see, Brooks describes our satisfaction in life as simply what we have divided by what we want. Now, let's be clear. Having more stuff has a marginal but only temporary increase to our satisfaction. By simply ticking more things off our bucket list, it increases our satisfaction marginally, but not for long. And that's why bucket lists in isolation aren't a bad idea, but aren't the entire solution. Dr. Brooks argues there's another way, simply wanting less. And that means building a reverse bucket list. We can still have nice stuff and brilliant adventures in our lives, and I'm certainly an advocate of doing that sort of stuff. But by detaching our feeling of happiness from the achievement of doing those things, it will help us in one simple way, give us more freedom. The reverse bucket list concept is about writing down a bucket list, but instead of only crossing the things out when you achieve them, you cross them out when you realise you probably don't need them to be happy. The reality is we can choose to be grateful today regardless of our situation. We can choose to be satisfied today. We can choose to be happy with our lives today. And I get that for many of us that isn't always particularly easy, but is possible. The reason the reverse bucket list idea is so powerful is that even though we might want to do loads of things in the next chapter of our lives, in the What Happens Next chapter of our lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. We do want to be doing stuff when we've got this freedom of time. Realising we don't actually need to be happy. This is about ensuring we both manage our ambition and aspirations, but not have those ambitions and aspirations have a negative emotional effect on our lives. There's a 3-minute interview with Brooks which explains this concept really well. And again, I'll put that in the link below. Definitely worth looking at. So if you're in your 50s and 60s and thinking about the next chapter of your life, this is definitely worth considering. You see, reverse bucket list isn't a stop living list. It's just a way to consider what we actually want, what we need, and the difference. Because both modern psychologists and ancient philosophies provide insights into our feelings of attachment. The Stoics talked about controlling what you can, but not worrying about the stuff you can't. The Buddhists have talked for millennia about attachment, and the fact that wanting and doing nice things isn't the problem. It's the perception that we need to do those nice things and that they're going to make us permanently happy, because if we're attached to those things in that way, we're actually never going to be. And modern day positive psychologists talk about the hedonic treadmill and how our baseline happiness normally comes back to a normal level for us after positive and negative events, meaning that achievements and experiences are great and you should do them, but the expectation that they're going to make you permanently happy is the main problem. So what small experiments could we do to set some of these ideas out? The first one is to simply write your own reverse bucket list. Spend 15 minutes writing the goals you think about the most, the ones that niggle and annoy, then go through them, and for everyone you realise you want but don't need to make you happy, put a line through it. Small experiment number 2 might be a consistent practice of gratitude. Now, I every morning list in, as part of a journaling process that I do, 3 things that I'm really grateful for, and I love doing that. And actually what it does, it gives me a really important perspective on the day that I really appreciate. And what I've realised is often it's not the elaborate experiences that I'm most grateful for, it's the simple stuff. It's the relationships that I value, it's the people that I love. And it's being fortunate enough to have opportunities to live the life I want and freedom to do it in that way. Don't get me wrong, having goals and aspirations is a good thing, but my practice of gratitude means that I'm more aware of the fact that I can be simply happy with the stuff that I've got. The other practical action you might want to consider is the anti-bucket list. Simply writing a list of things you don't want to do. It's more practical and less philosophical than the reverse bucket list, which is about removing attachment. But what it allows you to do is think about often how you spend your time. Things you might want to put on that list might be, I don't want to spend time with people who drain my energy. I don't want to do work which I don't love. Or I don't want to make decisions in my life simply to impress people I don't like. The aim to do less of these things you've got on your anti-bucket list is to make the most of the most important commodity you've got now, which is time. So the big question is, what do you really want to do in the next chapter of your life? And what are you allowing yourself to give up and detach yourself from to make that chapter the best? Now, I'd love to know your thoughts on this idea and your comments, so feel free to comment below. Also, if you're looking for a few more tiny experiments to try, here's a video we did specifically on the tiny experiments that might work for you in this next chapter of your life. And from a perspective about attachment, not from the Buddhists or the Stoics, but from the Chinese Taoists, watch this video here. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you on the channel soon.